Well, it's been a U.S. presidential election campaign like no other. President Donald Trump and Democrat nominee Joe Biden are reeling in the last voters as they both campaign in Florida, a key battleground state. The two rivals will hold another set of dueling rallies, this time in Minnesota. There are just a few days left before the official face-off. So let's unpack that then. For more on the U.S. election, I'm joined now by international relations expert John Stremlau from Wits University. Thank you for joining me, Prof. So we talk about the final rallies, but we're actually talking about different things in the context of these two campaigns, right? The big rallies, despite the COVID-19 situation in the United States, has been the hallmark of the Trump campaign, whereas the Biden campaign has done things slightly differently.
Well, they certainly have, and you're putting your finger on what is the #1 issue for the public, it seems to be, which is the handling of the COVID crisis. And the Republicans are following Donald Trump's lead, saying this is not a thing to worry about and we'll get through it, but he has no plan and he's badly managed it. And Joseph Biden, for his credit, I think is taking it much more seriously the way Ramaphosa did, even though we don't have a vaccine yet on the horizon. Trump talks about that, but it does seem to be that social distancing and mask wearing and tracing and all is really essential, hand sanitization. So the COVID crisis looms over it, but the rallies really are irrelevant now. There's been 75 or 80 million votes already cast. People are pretty set in their views. The polling looks fairly stable, but we don't know what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about the voting, mail-in voting and also postal voting that has already occurred. It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, 75 to 80 million Americans already cast their ballots. This is a record, is it not? And does it point to higher voter turnout and hence higher interest, and the stakes couldn't be higher?
It certainly does. It is unprecedented. It is a quarter of all registered voters. It's more than half of those who voted in 2016 have already voted. It is thought to be Democrats who by mail and early voting in order to avoid this COVID problem, whereas the Republicans will show up on the voting day. And this leads to the risk that Donald Trump will declare a victory on the night of next Tuesday in the U.S. and that Biden will have to challenge this in courts. But the courts are very heavily partisan in the U.S., unlike here in South Africa. And it's going to be a very tricky night unless Biden and Harris really win big and make it sort of beyond debate. Yeah. So yeah. It's not fair to Biden-Harris, but that's the way the election seems to be playing out right now.
And as you say, the only way this will be settled rapidly and decisively is if either of the two sides wins and wins big. And it seems, not unexpectedly, that the focus now is on those battleground states such as Florida. How crucial is Florida, for example, in deciding who will become the next U.S. president?
Well, in 2000, it was a few hundred votes separated Al Gore and remember and George W. Bush, and then the court 5-4 decided this is not democracy at work. This is a form of state capture by an empowered minority under the peculiar American Electoral College system. The urban areas of New York and California are very underrepresented in Senate of the Electoral College that picked president on a 50-state basis, first past the post. So Donald Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, as you know, in 2016. His campaign manager concedes that there's no way that Donald Trump will win the popular vote. The real issue is, will he win in the Electoral College? This is an issue that undermines the credibility and integrity of U.S. democracy and will have to be reviewed if Biden and Harris win big. If not, well, this conversation becomes somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah. So tell me lastly, Prof, if I was a betting man, would you say I should bet on this particular election outcome being taken to the courts, and what are the implications thereof? We've just had Amy Coney Barrett confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States with particular implications for the leaning of that particular court in as far as ideology is concerned. Can we bet on it that it will happen?
No. You can bet on it. Got to that contingency, that scenario that you're just describing. I think the odds of that, unless people are really lying to the pollsters, and I understand the differences and the difficulties in 2016, and I took Hillary Clinton's lead to be very serious, although she did win the popular vote. They're more sophisticated this year, and it looks to me that the last CNN poll yesterday, the last one they'll do before the election, has Biden-Harris up by 12 points nationally, which overcomes the 4 points that necessary for them to win.
Right. Professor John Stremlau, the technology letting us down there towards the end, but I think we got enough of that conversation going. He is from Wits University and was weighing in on the elections in the United States. So a few days to go before the U.S. goes to its election.